The demonizing of food.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm excited to learn about fasting tonight.
Did you do any prep?
I mean, I read a couple things, and I think it's interesting. I've never experienced it, but I've read about it.
What kind of context did you read about?
Just like meditating on pain and suffering, I guess, and that has some type of effect when you're
Okay.
starving. I mean, I know the health effects. I intermittent fast pretty much every day, so
Like purposefully?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to get more perspectives too. Shannon, what's up, girl? It's good to see you.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have a lot to add, so I'll just kind of be listening to people tonight and maybe asking questions.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I put together enough to hopefully throw a bunch of different things out, and then we'll see from there. Oh my gosh! All right, ignore Nightbot. Pastor just got wrecked. Can you guys see that, or is that on my side only?
I can see it.
Okay.
Hi, Pia. Pia? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ignore that and continue to do your emoji thing. Totally ignore that. I'll fix that later. we have Nightbot. I did this before I got demonetized, and then I forgot about it, to be honest with you. So I'll play with that because there's some cool stuff you can do with that. So I'll fix it, and then we'll play with it eventually. Continue with your emoji bad self, please, Pia. I don't believe it has the power to do anything against you other than complain about your behavior. Good God. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to throw out a bunch of random stuff because I just want to see what happens. So being that anybody who's watching this randomly, because this YouTube channel has been relatively dormant until recently, we do Bible study somewhere else. The Bible study happens here. It's at live Bible study on YouTube twice a week, Thursday at 6, Sunday at 6, both Central Time. Where you are now, where you've probably been for years if you're still here and watching this, is the regular channel. This will be Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. for now, possibly move to 6 p.m. later, Central Time, for both. Fasting is the topic, which is interesting to me for a lot of different reasons, because fasting kind of has it's kind of like religion in my view, because I was very deep into fasting prior to becoming Christian as a later adult after many years of atheism. Just due to my profession for a long time was in fitness. So I worked with bikini competitors, bodybuilders. And so fasting and micro and macro nutrition manipulation was my job. It was a big part of what I did. So fasting and all these different aspects for different reasons are things that I was very involved in prior. And then you move into kind of the spiritual space. And from there you have kind of another tree of different types of fasting, different religions that fast, different purposes for fasting, different consequences, positive and negative from fasting from a spiritual perspective. So it's a very, 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 very broad topic. But I guess narrow, hopefully, I'm curious by the end of it to see within our perspective, most of us, whether Christians should, if it matters, does it do anything? Is it relevant at all? The main 5 things that I covered just a bit on to get things rolling is, number 1 would be, what is fasting? There are generally, in our context, 4 types of fasting. So we'll talk about that first. What is it? Biblical fasting refers to the practice of voluntarily abstaining from food and sometimes drink. I think Mikkel was talking in Discord about how he does water fasting for a spiritual purpose. It is a common spiritual discipline found throughout the Bible, often used to seek God's guidance, humble oneself, or express repentance, sorrow, and devotion. If you aggregate, like we do, all the different verses in the Bible, those are going to be the primary reasons. But honestly, I think that would cover all of the reasons. The act of fasting is generally associated with prayer, which is true, the majority probably, and it represents a deepened focus on one's relationship with God. The New Age way that you'll see this, and I pulled up a Reddit post. If we have time, I want to go through that. The New Age spiritual woo-woo people, they push fasting in the perspective of, it's very similar to Christianity. It's just different language, really, is denying oneself, which is a very Christian principle, denying oneself to be able to elevate your mind or your consciousness towards, they'll call the universe, which we would call God, and any other religion would call their own deity. It's all the same thing, or at least it appears to be. The 4 types of fasting: you have a normal fast. An example of that would be Jesus' 40-day fast in the wilderness. You have a partial fast. That would be Daniel's fast, where he ate no rich food, meat, or wine. You have Paul's fast, which would be an absolute fast for 3 days after his encounter with Christ on the road to Damascus. And then you have a corporate fast, which is probably the most common today that I hear about, at least. Probably corporate fast. This would be like a church fast, but in the Bible, the nation of Israel or the early church in the New Testament in Acts, they would fast together. Those are the ones that I hear about the most. But that,
I can't hear you.
Who can't hear me? Can anybody else not hear me?
Me, 1 sec.
Try to leave
I
and
can
come
hear you
back.
now.
fine.
Weird.
Okay, if that happens, I've found just to leave and then come back, and usually that
It's working though.
fixes
Okay.
things. Okay, right on. So you have normal fast, you have a partial fast, you have an absolute fast, and you have a corporate fast. Remembering that this is specifically Christianity and this is specifically from the Bible. There are different kinds of fasting now that Christians do too. They're just not based in Scripture. Those would be the 4 scriptural basis for fasting. Number 2 on the list was, what are the Hebrew and Greek roots? There's some argument about this, to be completely honest with you, but I wanted to at least put it together something. So the Hebrew words I have here, Psalm, I have no idea if I'm saying that right. I'm not even going to try to say the other, but one would mean to abstain from food, and the other means to fast. There is some, from what I found, and I didn't spend too much time on it, but from what I found, there's decent corroboration between the words that were used in the Bible to convey fast and other extra biblical texts in Hebrew that used similar or same words. In Koine Greek, there were multiple examples and multiple terms for fasting. I listed a few there. There's a distinction between regular and a strict fast, which would have been for days at a time. The Greek word nistrao, I don't know, means to abstain from eating. In the New Testament, that same word is the Greek word translated as fast. If you look into this too, Greek just, I feel like most people know, but like Greek is language, even Koine Greek, which you don't really hear or see or at all anymore for the most part. They have a way better language than us in that, like, they have a lot of different terms to express different things. The easiest examples that I usually bring up are like love. Love in English is love. We love pizza. We love our wife. We love our kids. We love when the plumber fixes the toilet. It's all the same word. It's like your intention, your inflection, the context. They all tell the person that you're talking to what you mean by love. In Greek, even in Koine Greek, it's just not the case. They have all these different words to express the actual, the specific things that they're trying to say. So fasting was similar. You can find a lot of different terms and a lot of Greek words that were used for fasting. Number 3 was examples of fasting in the Bible, Old Testament versus New Testament. So Old Testament fasting first, I have 5 for each, old and new. These are like the main ones that probably everybody's aware of. There are many more, to be super, super clear. Number 1 would be Moses' fast on Mount Sinai out of Exodus 34:28. This is when Moses fasted for 40 days and nights without food or water when he went up to Mount Sinai to receive the 10 commandments from God. So like, big deal. This fast was a time of like serious communion with God. And he was also preparing to receive the law, which also, like, again, is a very big deal. Moses was there. This is the actual verse. Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread and water. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. This, I think we were talking about it just on Sunday. Like who wrote these things from the Bible? Who were the authors? Were they inspired? All of that jazz. this is an interesting thing when you talk to like people who are academic biblical teachers. I remember from seminary we talked about it very, very minorly. In the context of fasting, when you have these very monumental things happen in the Bible that you would call like very spiritual, Moses receiving the Ten Commandments, which at the time was the law. It was the biggest of the biggest deals of that time. He did it through fasting. So it adds, maybe not validity, but it adds pretty great context to the concept of fasting. What is it used for? What is the purpose? Could God have just done that, given him the Ten Commandments, or did Moses have to deprive himself, fast for 40 days, 40 nights, in order to receive them? I don't have the answer. It's just something to think about, because this is a recurring theme of people receiving things from God through fasting, which then extrapolates to now, where even Ghost said a minute ago what he was reading is it's not primarily, but oftentimes it's used as a means to receive something from God, direction. Some people believe communication, all of those things, but that's one really good example. The second one is David's fast for his child in 2 Samuel 12:16. This is when he fasted and prayed for the life of the infant, for his son. He was gravely ill after the sin with Bathsheba. The fast was an act of deep sorrow and repentance, which is, it falls into that category of 4 different types of fasting. The child ultimately died, though, if you remember, kind of didn't have a great ending. The verse there was David pleaded with God for his child. He fasted and spent the nights lying in sackcloth on the ground. I wanted to add that one because it's an example of like the fast not producing what the intended outcome was. So it's not even in the Bible where, you know, if you want to make the argument the Bible is all fake and BS, that's not a great story. It's not a great story for the fast not to work and for the child to die, regardless of the prayer and pleading from the individual. The third one, the people of Nineveh's fast, out of Jonah 3:5-7. This is when Jonah had warned the city of Nineveh of God's impending judgment, when he went to be the what do they call it, the town crier. This was from the king to the commoners. They fasted, repented, hoping for God to be merciful to them. This would be an example of one of those 4 different types of fasting. This would be like the corporate fast. This was a group fast for them to try to receive mercy and express their repentance to God. The verse, Jonah 3:5. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, from the kings to the commoners, put on sackcloth, which you'll see also is recurring. The sackcloth was adorned on the individual oftentimes when they would perform a fast. The fourth, Esther and the Jews fast, out of Esther 4:16. Before Queen Esther approached King Xerxes to plead for the lives of her people, she asked the Jews to fast for 3 days without food or water. This was a fast of intercession, which I don't hear a lot outside of like the Catholic space, because intercession is commonly used to kind of defend, no offense to our Catholic friend who's here. I don't mean this in any way other than exactly how I say it. But it's used often, like it's the word you'll hear in defense of like why they pray to the saints or to Mary, that these people it's an intercession between them and God. Anyways, this was the fast of intercession, seeking God's favor and then protection during another time of serious danger. The verse 4:16 says, "Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, nights, or a day after. And I, my attendants, will fast as you do." That would be another example of corporate prayer. Daniel's fast, no alcohol for me when fasting. Can you say you're fasting if you're drinking on top of it? I don't know. I guess fasting is an individual thing. I'll catch up on the comments in a second, though.
I don't think I would.
I wouldn't,
Personally.
just for the fact that like I'd get sick.
Well, I know Yom Kippur you do 1 day, no food, no water, but I mean, y'all, I live in Vegas. Like, you need to have a lot of water. If I do fast, it's only water.
Well, and we'll talk about that at the end. It's kind of like the actual science behind some of this, the biology. Because there's ways to do this that are just not intelligent. If you're in 110 degree heat and not drinking water for 3 days versus somebody who's like in Northern California or Oregon with
Yeah.
50 degree. Yeah, it's not the same thing for sure.
Joe, I have a question on number 5.
Yeah.
Only because I do hear it a lot, but it's, to my understanding, it wasn't really a fast. It's more like something that they kind of spinned off of like in the last century or two. Like the word fast isn't actually in there.
For Daniel's fast,
Yeah.
you'd have to throw out that whole section of Daniel. So is that what the argument is? Yeah, check, because I'll read that section, but you'd have to discard that whole section. But bring it up again if you pull it up. But let me read this one. So Daniel's fast, which I would love to talk about if she finds whatever she's looking to find, would be 10:2-3. This was when, from what the Bible says, Daniel fasted for 3 weeks. There was abstaining from rich foods, meat, wine, which, if you remember, was one of the 4 specific types of fasting, while seeking understanding of a vision that he had received. So he had already received the vision. He was trying to seek understanding for it. This would be a partial fast, and it was marked by mourning and prayer for insights into God's will. The verse, just a section of it, which you'd have to throw out more if we're going to say that the word fasting was not involved. At the time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine, touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. That's Daniel 10:2-3. The greater expanded context, though, would be a bit troubling if that were not true.
I mean, I'm reading it, but
Was it just was it arguing that because it was a partial fast, it's not a true fast? Like, because
No, it's
you only
just-
fast from certain things?
I mean, the word is just not in it. I mean, like,
Mhm.
to me, I feel like,
What, you mean the word fast was not in it?
no, it's actually not in there. Everyone
Right.
says it is, actually not. And
No, but why does that matter?
well, because it's not.
Well, if you explain a fast without using the word fast, is it not a fast?
I mean, but is it though? He said he did. I mean, basically, he didn't have certain things that didn't taste. I mean,
That's the
I know, like
argument,
when that just sounds like it could be, I don't know, desperation or depression. I mean, when my ex-husband was deployed, I didn't really eat very much either. You know, I wasn't fasting. It was more like I was stressed out and just focused on all of that stuff. So
but was it like an intentional mourning in a sense? Because that's what Daniel said specifically.
Yeah, because there was a period I couldn't hear from him and was waiting for the priest to show up at my door and tell me I lost my husband. Yeah.
Right.
That's a
fast.
But I was fasting.
It's a fast.
Some
it doesn't
animals
make it not a fast.
unintentionally fast when they're feeling sick. Some animals won't eat and they're basically fasting. Like, it's not like they're intentionally doing it, it's just biological. So sometimes when we're like stressed, we're kind of unintentionally fasting still.
Right, but I guess to be fair, Rodriguez, there is a difference between like an unintentional fast. If you look at the definition of a biblical fast, it would be a voluntary abstaining, which I would argue would be an intentional abstaining. So if you're sick and you don't eat for 3 days, fine. Right. But where in the context makes you think this was not intentional?
Did have an appetite?
I'm sorry, what?
Maybe, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Because it sounds like me, like maybe you just lost your appetite, and because of that, So like fasting, I'm with Joe on that one. I think fasting have to be intentional. Like you're doing it for a reason.
Yeah, because I lost a lot of weight. I didn't mean to. It just kind of happened.
Right,
you know? I remember even putting like So I don't know. To me, I feel like there has to be like a spiritual intention, I would say, behind it. You know, I mean, my daughter fasted for blood work the other day. I just
right, but that's my question. Is like how would this not qualify? Verse 2 to me is open and shut, and then 7 explains it.
I think because we're putting it in a biblical context, which is usually spiritual by default, and there's not really, like I said, I feel like it's more of like a sorrow. Like he's just describing what happened.
I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. Those who were with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them as they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left. My face turned deathly pale and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking and I listened to him and I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. it was the way he, I mean, contextually, like you're right, it's not directly stated, but like contextually, I feel like there's a decent argument that it was the way of interpreting the vision.
I mean, I just feel like there's a lot going on. If you have a crazy vision like that, you are not thinking about a Happy Meal. He was just busy and super, got a lot of emotional stuff going on.
But if
I mean,
he
it's
got a
titled,
vision and he was trying to interpret the vision, like this is not a single time this happened. Like this happened more than
I know.
once. So why would this one not apply? What did you read? I want to read whatever you read.
I mean, I'm
curious.
looking at this. Okay, hang on. My main argument is just that the word fast is not in there. So that's the only thing I kind of get a little about when it comes to that. And I know there was the whole thing with like sacrificing to idols too, like some of the food. And that was another reason why later on they didn't, you know, eat certain things. But I just, if you look up the word fast, it doesn't talk about the specific little stuff like this. Like I've you know, coming from a Pentecostal background where they do this stuff a lot, they have weird rules. Like you can have brown rice but not white rice, and not, you know, you can have this but not that, this seasoning but not that seasoning. It just sounds so bullshit.
Well, I mean, because in a 2024 perspective, it is the specifics. So like I put them back on the screen. The normal fast, the partial fast, the absolute fast, the corporate fast. This is like widely accepted among scholarship, and it's not just these one verses. These are just the verses that I use as examples. It's like it's numerous.
I know it's accepted.
You know?
Yeah, I know it's accepted. I just don't. I don't know. I just, like I said, I don't think it was a spiritual thing. I've always kind of believed that, and the word's not there, and it doesn't directly say that it was intentional. This is more like a description, not a prescription.
Well, I mean, how would you say this isn't intentional? At that time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no food. And then directly, I ate no food, no meat, no wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions. He's explaining what he did.
I still feel like that can be a fast, though. Like, even if you're, I don't know, I still hold to that. Like, if you're going through something intense, you kind of sometimes, like, intuitively want to fast to be able to understand your situation better. Whether it's you're going through something intense, you want to fast from social media because it's blinding you from what's going on, or, you know, that's just one example. But I feel like I still feel like it's kind of like a fast, but like it's not. I don't know.
Let me ask a question. If Ghost, because Ghost mentioned he does intermittent fasting, using the word fast. If Ghost came to you and was like, "Hey man, I'm thinking of not eating these foods from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m." And then a week later I was like, "Bro, you don't fast." Like just because he didn't use the word. If he explained what he's doing and it would qualify under other contexts or examples in the same book of what a fast would be, doesn't mean we don't call it a fast. It would be like in the New Testament, there are plenty of sections where Paul talks about salvation but doesn't use the word. He uses like descriptions and sentences instead that don't involve.
Words are just shortcuts to meaning.
Right.
So if you want to describe something, you can use, you know, paragraphs and never use the word you're describing, but you're still describing the thing.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, because obviously the other scriptures you put up were pretty clear. You know, like in Esther, they called for a fast, right?
Because they used the word. They use the word.
Right. But I mean, he doesn't say like, oh, because, you know, I'm mourning, I decided to petition the Lord and blah, 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 blah. It was more, like I said, it just kind of happened. I mean, maybe.
Okay, let's try.
I'm just saying, not completely clear. It's a little.
At some point he became aware of what he was doing, right?
We immediately
maybe not
became aware.
I get that there was a vision. But I like.
And then the vision is described as him understanding it due to the symptoms of the fast. They're in the same paragraph. But let's next example though. Here, let's see if this adds clarity. I'm glad that you brought it up though. Like it's a good conversation. Exodus 34:28. Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights without eating bread or drinking water. That's when he wrote the tablets. That would be another in most people's eyes, it would be another example of a partial fast. There's no fast is in that sentence. So if we isolate the sentence, was it a fast or was it not? Because that's basically what Daniel says. And then Acts 9:9, for 3 days he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. Like some translations won't use the word fast. And I don't think you need to. You did not eat or drink. Like that's relatively clear.
That's fair, but it also doesn't say like that they were so distressed that they stopped eating or drinking.
No, but people specifically fasted as
I
a
know
means
that.
of as a means of
Back to
mourning.
the previous one.
Exodus
Well,
34,
Moses.
28.
Yeah.
Which we read.
Oh,
It's number one on the. It's the one we read.
Yeah.
Moses
I
on
have
Mount
something
Sinai.
to add about the Daniel thing.
Okay.
So earlier in the book of Daniel, I think it's earlier. I think it's like chapter 2 or 3 or something. I remember where Daniel and all of his friends are like, they intentionally chose to fast at that point. I gotta
that was
find
the
it.
idol. That was the idol one that I was mentioning earlier because it was being sacrificed to idols.
Right. But I feel like if he intentionally chose to fast earlier and like during that time, then it's still on the table that it could have been intentional later on. But maybe not. I guess we don't know.
Right.
Huh.
But
Yeah.
I would
It
say,
shows that he knew what fasting was.
yeah.
I don't think that's your argument though, is it, Rodriguez? That he didn't like he understood fasting. I think you're more upset that like the text is not
No, I'm not
using the
upset.
word. Well, I don't mean upset.
My whole thing is just that I feel like a lot of times as Christians we put our assumptions in certain things because we think one thing when it's actually not clear and we just assume. We all know what happens when we assume. So I just want to make clear that the word fasting is not actually there. It doesn't, like, yes, I get that this is what happened and he got a vision. I get that. I mean, but sometimes visions happen and that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, that's all I'm saying.
Okay. I mean, if we have time, we can come back to it. I think it's interesting. It's interesting to point out. To me, like I don't know how you'd get away from it.
The other thing too is just what happens to your brain. We've discussed like DMT and different things like that kind of heighten the spiritual aspects of the fast. That's just not going to happen if you're not fasting. That's just biological.
Well, right, but that's kind of what adds validity to it. So he chooses to not eat at least partial meat or wine. It doesn't give more than that. On the 24th day of the first month, which is in line with 3 weeks, as I was standing on the bank of the river, I looked up and before me, and he explains essentially hallucinating would be a different term to take it out of vision. He starts hallucinating, which would be the consequence of a fast.
The DMT.
Potentially.
Maybe.
I don't. It's interesting. We can definitely come back to it, but let me move us along to the New Testament. So in the New Testament, the first one, Jesus' 40-day fast in the wilderness out of Matthew 4. This was before the public ministry. He had fasted for 40 days, 40 nights in the wilderness. It's obviously everybody knows the story. During that time, he was tempted by the devil, but had very intently relied on God, not necessarily God entity, but specifically God's word to overcome the temptation. Just for me personally, I've always found that very interesting. Matthew 4, 1 and 2 says, Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry, it says. The second one, Anna the prophetess fast, out of Luke 2. Anna was the widow and a prophetess, worshipped in the temple constantly, fasting and praying. It's explicitly written about. Her devotion and fasting were part of her spiritual life as she waited for the coming Messiah. Due to the position that she was in, her perspective would have been very cleanly on the Messiah versus a Gentile. Luke 2:37 says she never left the temple but worshipped night and day, fasting and praying. An interesting thing to do, though, for anybody who's cares enough to do it, you could definitely pick and pull every verse that involves fasting out of the New Testament and the Old Testament and actually look at the old text and see what word they used. In Hebrew, it would be much easier because there were only a couple of terms that were used. In Greek, like we briefly spoke about, it'll be a little bit more difficult because there were a number of different terms that were used, but they were relatively similar in how they looked. So even somebody who doesn't speak Greek would have an easy time finding it. But it'd be interesting to see if the translation you use has inserted fasting anywhere, because that absolutely happens for sure. Number 3, the disciples fasting with John the Baptist's followers out of Matthew 9. John the Baptist's disciples asked Jesus why his disciples didn't fast like they did. Jesus had explained that fasting was appropriate when seeking or mourning. There's an example, but not while the bridegroom, Jesus, was still present. The verses say this: Then John's disciples came and asked him, how is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? Jesus answered, how can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is still with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, then they will fast. One side note is that this is used by people who are anti-fasting. They'll say that this is a good example, in their perspective, of why you should not fast, which doesn't make sense in context, because Jesus essentially says when he dies is when they should have something to mourn. But it also just doesn't make sense in the greater context of fasting is taught later in the Bible, and fasting is taught all throughout the earlier sections of the Bible. But just fun little side note to the anti-fasters. Number 4, the church at Antioch fasting before sending out missionaries out of Acts 13. There are a number of examples out of Acts for relatively obvious reasons. While the early church in Antioch was worshiping and fasting, the Holy Spirit directed them to set apart Paul and Barnabas for missionary work. This was in 13, right? Yeah, after chapter 13. They laid hands on them and then sent them out. While they were worshiping the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work to which I have called them. So after they had fasted and prayed, they placed their hands on them and then sent them out. The next one, Paul and Barnabas fasting before appointing church elders, the next chapter out of Acts, is when Paul and Barnabas they brought together the churches during the missionary journeys that they were on, and they begun to appoint some of the elders for each congregation. They prayed, they fasted in order to seek guidance from God, which is one of the other reasons that people fast. Acts 14:23 says, Paul and Barnabas appointed elders for them in each church, and with prayer and fasting committed them to the Lord in whom they had put their trust. Is fasting a universal religious concept? Fasting appears in literally every major religion, and in most minor religions that have any weight and number of people behind them at all. Fasting is unbelievably universal in the spiritual world, regardless of what you believe specifically. So if you're just listening or you can't see, you have Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Eastern Orthodox Christianity, Baha'i faith, Jainism, Sikhism, Taoism, Native American spirituality, just a few, but it is virtually all of them. Any and every major religion has some form of fasting that they do, and it is entirely spiritual. It's just a matter of what they're trying to do, how they're trying to connect, and then mostly the verbiage that they use. The science behind it, you experience hormonal changes. This is a major one. When I would put people through caloric deficits before they would go on a stage and flex for a living, their hormones would literally change. So we had regulation required blood draws that I had to put these guys and gals through, depending on how close they were to a show, because they were more deprived and more deprived and more deprived. They were never fully fasting, but it goes to show that even just deprivation, just the caloric deficit to an extreme degree, will can drastically change your hormones. And so they'd have to get blood draws and see where they were. And this is why you get people with attitude issues as they're not eating, because it becomes much harder to keep your emotional equilibrium due to hormonal changes. You have cellular repair becomes different metabolic switch to ketosis. This is why most people do intermittent fasting. It's not the only reason, but it is one of the primary reasons why they do it. Ketosis is just the easiest, stupid way of explaining it is like your body begins to eat itself, is how people say it. Weight loss and fat burning, impact on inflammation and oxidative stress. That's big, and people are getting pretty big into this right now in the circles that I'm in. Inflammation is a major problem in America just because of the poison that we eat. And so people are doing the right thing now, finally, and looking to diet to pull down inflammation. Longevity and anti-aging, people fast for that reason. I don't know the science behind that, but there are studies that are done, and there's some data. I'll just say that. Brain health and cognitive function. This is really big, and this is a reason that I fast, to be completely honest with you, outside of anything that is spiritual. It's not universal, but for a very, very, very large percentage of humans, the more you eat, especially because we eat poison in this country, your mental clarity is extremely, extremely diminished. If you are somebody who eats like not naturally, you don't eat, you're not walking the edges of the grocery store, you're not home cooking your meals, you're eating shit out of boxes, you're getting fast food, and even most restaurants, definitely not all, but like most, if that is you, then I would recommend trying a very healthy fast under advisement of somebody who knows what they're doing, and just see how you feel mentally. Brain fog will just disappear. It will be lifted if done properly and carefully. For most people, not all, for most. But some of the only reasons that I fast, because I do not like to fast. I am an eater, and I don't like losing weight because I'm already a relatively skinny guy. I get so much mental clarity. So if I know like I have some major things I need to do where my brain needs to be absolutely functioning, I will not eat. It's just that simple. And if I don't eat, then there's no fog. I think quicker. I'm more witty. Like the way my brain functions is just better. And you can test it too, right? Like in the morning, don't eat, do some intense work, see how you feel. Next time, eat a crap ton, like go eat a Denny's breakfast, perform the same work. 9 out of 10 people will do better after not eating than the people who eat. Heart health is big. This honestly, in my opinion, as a non-professional, is just because of what we eat. I think heart health is just fine for people who are not fasting but eat relatively healthy. I think that's just because we eat absolute garbage here. Gut health is another big one. It's another medical reason that people fast. And again, it's primarily because we eat poison and we don't eat actual real food. And even the real food that we eat is covered in pesticides and is grown in a really weird way. And it's just no good. That's that. Now, whatever y'all want to talk about. And I can flip back through stuff, or I can pull up links. I know we had some things dropped in here, but the floor is open. Okay, I'll put some videos in here. Oh, here's Mikkel's water fasting thing. I want to read this. 4-day water fast expert, Mikkel. Usually do the 72 to 96 hour water fast at least twice a year. Not just for the health and anti-aging benefits alone. So there's anti-aging. So Mikkel, if you know more about that, I'd love to learn more about the anti-aging. I looked at a little bit of data, but I didn't read the study, to be completely honest. So I didn't get the full download. Nothing ritualistic or dogmatic at all, just the health benefits. Clear-headed during the day, alert, energetic. My immune system got stronger. I hardly get sick. With fasting, my body healed my sciatica 10 years ago. Wow. Daily fasting routine. Start at 6:30 a.m. with 16-ounce glass of water at room temperature. Usually at 8 a.m. a cup of coffee with coconut sugar. Mid-morning glass of water, but with a pinch of salt. Oh, okay. Lunchtime glass of water, pinch of salt. Half hour later, a cup of black coffee. So you just do coffee and water that whole time?
Probably once. How many servings of coffee is it, did you say?
Twice, it looks like. Twice. 8 a.m. and 12:30. Mikkel's here, right? Yeah, Mikkel, if you're still here, if you want to just very briefly type out the reason you do salt.
That's for electrolytes. and your potassium.
Potassium was what I was assuming. Yeah. Is the electrolyte profile really that good with salt?
Yeah, that, I mean, I would get electrolyte water too. There was yeah, go ahead.
That's what Gatorade gets its electrolytes from, right? It's all just the sodium.
I believe so. That's most of it, yeah. And the other thing I had put on there was coconut water. You have to be careful with that though, because you got to make sure it's like actual coconut water, not like the.
No, he did coconut sugar.
No, I know. I'm just telling you, I did coconut water.
Oh, okay.
With none of like, but it had to be the all natural stuff. It wasn't like, the nice flavored type crap.
Yeah, well, that's just another form of garbage. Yeah.
But even that, I had to be careful.
It's real. Or do you mean if the coconut water has additives in it?
Yes.
Yeah, you can get. Yeah, for example, like you can get like mineral water. That's just mineral water. You can get like what's the crap my kid gets? Like LaCroix and like all the others. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So the coconut water just has coconut in it. Coconut water.
No added sugar. No
other ingredients.
And it's not good. It's not pleasant, really. But you actually have to be careful because there is some regular sugar in it, and because it's like a laxative if you do have stuff like that. So you just have to, be careful with it.
Huh, interesting.
Same thing with like vitamins. I remember during one fast I was trying to take vitamins and that didn't work out well. Like my scalp had like, I don't know, sores on it. And it was like, it hurt so bad. And I found out it was like too much vitamin B or something. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, it's amazing what the vitamins can do, the micronutrients that people just don't know. And it's another thing too, like in America specifically, almost nobody gets proper micronutrients because the food we get is so highly processed. Even the healthy food is so highly processed or highly pesticided that we lose a lot of that. And then if you add on the healthy food, you cook the hell out of it. Whatever was left is then gone. Yeah. It's a very sad thing. Ghost said the intention, I'm going back just to be clear. The intention guides the fast and adds context, which will shape the experience. But even without the intention, your perception changes by default. Biological cause and effect. Yeah, absolutely. I started fasting intermittently when I was weaning off of I don't know if I can say that, but that's cool. That's interesting and makes total sense. I love learning that you train competitors, Joe. I know many people who are in bodybuilding so much closer and well-versed in that world than I'd like to admit. Yeah, I mean, it's a sad world. There's a lot of good people in it, but it's like, it's the best example of like vanity. Your job is to look good aesthetically.
It's a slippery slope.
It's totally a slippery slope. And the majority of them are on all kinds of stuff and none of it is actually natural. Oh, even the women are on all kinds of stuff.
No, I know.
When you fast, you give your digestive system a break, which it really needs from time to time. Yeah, that's another huge thing too. Like if you have gastrointestinal problems, if you have problems going to the bathroom, a medical fast is a great idea because it can clean you out. You gotta get a reset, your gut, and then also your intestines. Like if you imagine when we eat food, especially the garbage that we eat, especially with how much salt it has, it absorbs all the water. Add in that most people don't drink water to begin with. Like a lot of people just don't ever drink water or drink very little water a day. Unlike what Mikkel put in his thing there on Discord, that should be every day. Food or no food, water-wise, just like water intake. Kat and I drink tons of water, but from what I anecdotally understand of the world, most people don't drink that much water. So if you're eating all this food that is highly, highly processed, has high amounts of sodium, that's sucking in whatever water you do drink, and it's taking it. So that when the food passes through, on its way through, your intestines don't get to absorb the water. So you are just like in this constant state of drought, and it keeps your intestines not only unlubricated, but also you're not absorbing the H2O, yo. So it makes going to the bathroom harder. It makes you have to go to the bathroom more because your body like can't do it all in one go. It's just all around bad. So drink water. Super important.
I just drank some water for you.
Good. Super
For
important.
me.
Kat and I drink water all day. It's like years ago we used to like challenge each other, but now it's you just have to drink water. You'll feel better if you just drink freaking water. It's like very rare.
My dad's like, "Do you want to do a water race?
You should do it. You should do it. It makes it fun. Make it fun.
Yeah, we used to do that all the time.
Whatever you got to do to make it happen. Mikkel, 100% Joe, our mental capacity and strength has been extremely compromised, for sure. And there's a whole rabbit hole with all that, too. Like the stuff that's put in the food. You can isolate a number of things. Kat could come on and name them because she knows them better than I do. But the things that, like, they severely restrict mental cognition, and we just eat them. And we know
I don't know
this.
what we're allowed to say on here. I know you said this is like a clean channel.
No, this is Tattoo Theist. You can say anything that won't get me banned or demonetized, please. Again.
You decalcify your pine cone.
Yeah, you can say that. That doesn't matter.
Pineal
gland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say it.
No, pineal gland is fine. I mean, don't say anything absolutely crazy.
I'm totally joking there.
Yeah, that stuff like that. But other things too, for sure.
I agree with what he was saying, like with the aging stuff, as someone who basically did the same thing he did with water, except I don't like coffee. I just did black unsweetened tea. I think I looked a lot younger. My skin looked really good. Like the white in my eyes was really, there's just a lot of things that happen biologically. Your body's either, when it's resting, it's in repair always if you're not interrupting it. And that's kind of my beef, so to speak, with these partial, fasts is it's just not like, I don't make the rules, if your digestive system is doing something, you know what I mean? If your digestive system is doing something, then it's doing something, So
how about this then? Because Patricia brought up a good point, and I realized when she was saying that is that I didn't even put it in this at all. Is what about the modern fast in Christianity, which is basically whatever you want? People, I don't know. When I was in the megachurch world, it was their fast would normally not be water. They would specifically recommend, food or water. They'd specifically recommend people didn't do that, which I found a bit odd because it's ass backwards to the Bible. But what they would recommend is that people pick something that they're, close to addicted to. And for nine out of 10 people, it's either their phone or social media.
That's how I was introduced to fasting. Was the Baptist pick your choice. What do you want to fast for?
Which is wild.
That's Lent. That's like Lent. That's like
yeah.
To me, if you guys call it that, I'll feel a little. I don't know how Mikkel feels, but I know no, I don't want to say that. That sounds like an a-hole thing to say.
I'm just learning that they did it for like spiritual benefits, like gifts. I didn't realize that they were doing it for their own personal benefit.
Let me put it to you like this, okay? Let's just say you're training to be an Olympian, whatever, okay? You're doing all this training, all this stuff you're supposed to be doing according to the book. And someone comes along is like, oh, I'm training too. And you hear, and it's like, no, bro, like it is not this thing here. You know what I mean? You're not getting the same outcome. It's it's just, and I don't know how to say it without being sounding like an a-hole, but it's really not the same thing.
I'm always in a different weight class than most people, so I don't I get what you're saying though.
So here, think about this. Hold on though. So I think there's a validity to the 2000 to the 21st century fast, but it's not a biblical fast. And I think the biggest, most blaring difference that keeps the conversation short is like a biblical fast from what the Bible says. It seemed to push people into a different state of consciousness. We have the science now we understand now scientifically why that happens. And we have scientific proof that happens. They just can't explain beyond that. However, I'll make the argument for Gen Z and the millennials, some of us,
Okay.
that you're still demonstrating some of the same things. So like you're demonstrating dependence, you're overcoming temptation. In some regards, you'll strengthen your faith because part of the intention is to not lean on, like if it was social media, people will just fucking zombie into social media all day. And you're supposed to instead use that time to lean into God. So you strengthen your faith and your dependence on God. And in some time, you'll humble yourself because you understand you have this addiction. You're probably struggling to not do the thing that you've decided to not do. But it's not, at the end of the day, though, it's not a fast. It's not a fast. So there
Like,
does need to be like a different term.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, like call it Lent or whatever, you know? But and I'm not going to deny that there's no benefits or breakthrough, you know, like I know people who, you know, I think it's just science. 21, what is it? It takes 21 days to develop a habit or break a habit. Yeah. I mean, that's also fact too. You know, and even like, I'm not a person who I didn't think I had any addiction or anything like that. But even like when you're fasting, oh, now I sound like an a-hole. I'm not comparing myself to Jesus being, you know, fasting and being tempted by the devil. But I will say whatever your weakness or strongholds are do tend to like come up. Like I didn't know I was addicted to Coke Zero. I know that sounds stupid. But I swear to God, Joe, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I swore I heard a can of freaking Coke opening or like.
Oh my God.
No, I know that sounds stupid. I know
it doesn't. Like, people do it.
But like, you just learn, you know, kind of like what's the issue, what's not. Someone else said that they learned that they were addicted to sugar throughout it, and then like afterwards, it like you really do break it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like gone. It's like, okay, yeah, I like Coke Zero, but I can go without it. I'm not gonna be like, you know,
because most things truly are like habitual. And it's people being unconscious of a habit, which is why it becomes a habit. That's why like it's so important for me being like the type of person that I am to be consistently like very aware of what I'm doing all the time. Because I'll notice very quickly that I'm falling into a habit of doing something. Like your soda example is a great one. We literally never buy soda ever. My kid has been to fast food once in her entire life. She's 8 years old with me and Kat one time because it was an absolute emergency. We just don't do that crap. But and here's the but is I bought this I don't know what it's called, a seltzer machine. You put the bottle in it with water and it bubbles the water. With good intentions, but then I learned they have these like syrups that are like soda flavor, and they're not as bad as soda. I looked obviously, but they're still not great. But we've had that now in the past several months, like a time or two a week maybe. It has become a habit, and like I'm aware of the habit, and I'm still probably gonna go do it tonight with Kat for dinner. But I'm aware of it. But being aware is like the first part, and then you become aware, and then you can change the habit. The problem is most people are not like that self-aware. They'll just fall into the habit, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes hard to break.
Yeah.
We normally get alkaline water from our local water depot. We get a bunch of big jugs. Does it come in plastic jugs? Get probiotic
I think it only matters
sodas.
about the temperature. Some of it isn't our fault, Joe. It's like what they put on the shelves, man. Like.
Well, it's not your fault until you're aware of it. Once you're aware of it, I have zero sympathy for anybody. Then it's a choice.
Well, I'll have sympathy because sometimes it's too expensive. Sometimes it's just,
water's
you know,
free.
like you were, like, anyways. So like you were saying how like, you know, it was an emergency and she had fast food, blah, like I'm a single mom. I had a lot of those emergencies, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I get it. I totally get it.
I mean, for sure. There's in most cases, there's always something that we can do. Some people will cook for the week ahead, keep big coolers of food in their car. Like there's things you can do, but there's always going to be points of failure. It's just like, it's going to happen for sure. And it becomes prioritization. Like I'll prioritize to not fail at these things. Having my kid eat fast food is something I prioritize very high. Other people won't, but that means that like, there's a point of failure for me too, where I didn't prioritize something that Rodriguez did prioritize. So it's not like any of one's better than the other. It's just we prioritize different things. And so our breaks in the system are at different points. We
I know someone said like you just quit when it comes to addiction. It's not that simple. There's a lot of brain activity involved in addiction, so it's not like, I don't know. I think that's a different.
You have to create a new addiction, a better addiction. Pretty much is how you break bad addictions.
I think it depends on
habits, really.
It depends on the person. I'm an addict. I was a heroin addict for years.
So absolutely. I am. Yeah, very.
But it depends on. So for addicts, for people who are actually like addicts, and so yes, I totally agree. Replacing the addiction is the only way. I know addicts who have done it other ways. Like, fine, more power to you. But I have to be completely engrossed and obsessed with things. Otherwise, it's trouble for me. But exactly. I think for like for normal people, maybe it's different. I don't know. But
it's because
it's still the recircuiting or the rewiring of the brain.
Exactly.
Right.
The patterns going, so you're just used to doing that same pattern over and over and over again. But if you get a new circuit going,
for sure. Yeah. And that's what we were talking about before, though. That's just like addiction is just habits. The difference in addiction is that some of them are physically dependent. So when you stop, you can't just not shoot heroin tomorrow. Like, yeah, you can do that. You'll throw up and crap yourself. And
you can, but you're going to go through some crap.
Yeah, right. But like if you drink soda every day and then just like you'll be uncomfortable. But you're not going to like go into withdrawal or end up in the hospital or something.
Yeah, but I think that there's just, I don't know that I completely agree with some of that message also, because there is gambling addicts, there's porn addicts, there's a lot of addictions where there's no substance actually involved. But the problem is just like I said, the way the brain is wired, the neurochemicals involved, what's firing and what's not firing in the brain. So I just...
For sure.
We're habitual creatures. It's just what are the habits we're doing is the whole thing.
Yeah.
100%. But some like I've been honest about it. When I was younger, I had a serious porn problem. You can just not watch porn. That is a possibility. Nothing is forcing you to. I'm not gonna die if I don't. I'm not gonna start sweating and not be able to talk to people or start throwing up all over myself. Like, you just can. It is possible. That's what I did with porn. I just stopped watching porn. I finally just got to a place of like, there's no way I'm ever going to do that again. And then that was it. It doesn't mean it's that easy, but it is that possible.
The person has to want to.
That's exactly right. Yeah. You have to want it bad enough.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
I mean,
not always.
Who quits anything that is addictive that doesn't want to quit? I don't ever hear of that.
That's one thing I would kind of get into. I just need to stop talking.
They're good examples, though. They're good examples. Like, I agree with the neurology behind it. Like, addiction is powerful, and even for pornography or gambling, like those people end up in our rooms at NA and AA. So I'm not like discounting their stuff. It's a serious problem. But there's a difference for sure.
Yeah, something I had put in the chat though, where Mikhail put his stuff was like a verse that helped me when I was struggling. It's not addiction. The problem too, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but a lot of times when it comes to addiction, it's also a cycle of, like, with your self-esteem. Like, because you feel like, you know, a piece of shit, you do X, Y, and Z. Then you feel like a piece of shit because you did do X, Y, and Z and blah, 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 blah.
That's the major thing for porn addicts. Hard. You feel shame and disgusting for doing it, so then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then for sure. So,
like when I was reading, and I think it was John, I don't know what verse I put up, John 5, John 15, something like that. Like when I was praying and fasting for my healing, I remember like I was in a low point where I was sick. Again, I'm not an addict, but I understand some of like the mindset of it, and it was like, I should be healed. I don't even care if I'm healed anymore. Like, it's just like, whatever. I was just so, you know, I don't know how to explain it, just like done. And then when I came across the verse, I had hope, because people would tell me things like, oh, you have to want to do this or you have to want to do that. And, you know, when I was helping out with addictions at the time, they would say that, like, God's only going to help you if you do X, Y, and Z. And that's just not the case. I think it delves into his sovereignty personally, because some people, you know, do get set free and others don't. And it's not always contingent on what we do or not do, what we pray or don't pray, what we have faith in and what we don't have faith in. And I feel like it's not fair, because it's like saying God's not going to meet you where you're at. And the thing that I liked about the story in John is it talks about the man who was at the pool of Bethesda. I won't get into all of it, but
no, I know what you're getting at.
But yeah, basically he got healed, and I felt like he was kind of a wise ass. Everyone has different opinions, but you know, God asked him if he wanted to get healed, and he didn't actually say yes. He's just kind of like, well, you know, I show up here every day. But yeah, and God just heals him anyways, not because he had enough faith, not because he prayed. He didn't even know who Jesus was. God just healed him because of who God is, who Jesus is. Not
even biblically, that type of view is not supported by the Bible. Plenty of people like received recognition in the form of healing or something else who were not considered to be holy people. So there's nothing that's always driven me. Yeah, it's just absolute bullshit.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I read this and this happened. I'm like, okay,
that's pastors who have absolutely no fucking clue what they're talking about. It's just like a common church trope, you know?
But I think they do it because they want people to do the right thing. I get it. But unfortunately, it does fall under spiritual manipulation, in my opinion.
Well, no, it is. If they know it's a lie, then they are a pastor who should have their ability to be a pastor revoked. And if they don't know it's a lie, then they're teaching it with good intentions as an ignorant person who also should not be a pastor, in my abrasive opinion. I have to start wrapping up. Is there any burning desires, since we talked about AA and NA? At the end of the meetings, they'll ask you if there are burning desires. Anybody who has anything else to say. And while I wait for somebody, Nat said, even removing the cold turkey part is the only thing you can't ever quit. Yeah, well said. Mikkel put out a book, by the way, if anybody else is interested too. He said, if you guys have a chance to check out Mark Lewis's book, The Biology of Desire, Why Addiction is Not a Disease. I agree that it's not a disease. I haven't read that book, but I will check it out.
There's another one by Mike Dye, and he says it's a disease and a sin, and he tackles it from different angles. So I kind of like that one. So
my hot take, I just think it's personality type. There seems to be, if you meet a bunch of people in an AA room for years and years and years, they're just, most of them have similar personality types. I don't really think it's a whole lot beyond that. And then when you get like Lord Help Us Tampa said, I've found too, like addicts are the type of people that run and always have to be consumed with something. So it's just a matter of misplaced direction. Not all, which is why
also trauma. A lot of them have horrific stories. So it's like, I get it.
For sure. But there are plenty of people with horrific stories who never, or maybe tried heroin once and then never did it again.
But that
so
may not be
disconnect.
Like you've got people in church where, you know, they're 500 pounds. Their drug is clearly different.
For sure.
To be an a-hole. And the other thing too is like eating disorders, self-harm. A lot of them have the same mindset. So I don't think it's.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think people with eating disorders seem very, very different than like substance abuse addicts.
You'd be surprised how much the thought process is very similar. I have to do this or I can't do that. It's.
Agree to disagree.
That's okay. Yeah.
I know. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Nat said, Patricia, I agree, but we also need to do with good intent. Otherwise, it can move over to a whole other addiction. Not extremes are good outside of context of biblical fasting. What did I miss? What did Patricia say? Oh, Patricia said, that's why fasting is important, so we can remain balanced with food. Oh, okay.
But she's true. It's true about the not letting it get to extremes with fasting, which goes into the eating disorder thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is complicated.
For sure. There are also like underlying health issues. Your age. How much do you exercise? Are you somebody who runs 5 miles a day? That could change how you need to approach fasting. How do you normally eat? And then if you all of a sudden just don't eat anything at all, that can be extremely dangerous. There are other things that like need to be talked about. The difference between now and biblical times, not that the Bible like prescribes in detail how to fast, but it kind of does, is most people were eating basically the same stuff.
Right.
All the time, everywhere. That's not at all the case today, even remotely. So the whole thing needs to be definitely adjusted, and you do need to be careful. People with eating disorders should not do it without talking to a doctor or having somebody kind of be a spiritual advisor in a sense who actually knows what the hell they're doing and what they're talking about. As someone, Nat said, as someone with an ED, I shockingly agree with you. Oh, eating disorder. I shockingly agree with you, Joe. I don't try to pretend that I have the same struggles as someone who's addicted to drugs. I didn't even mean it like that. I think they're like equally freaking horrible. I just like, I was around rehabs a lot, and I knew
it
like
affects your brain, but like it's just a different experience.
It does, but like a girl I dated for a long time had an eating disorder. It's just like, I don't see, they're just different. Like some of the things that are similar, like feelings of shame, poor self-image, but like most addicts I know didn't have a poor self-image prior to addiction, whereas people with eating disorders usually had a poor self-image, which resulted in their eating issues.
Yeah, different triggers, different like
right. But like
Right.
the compulsion is the same. I recognize that. This like incessant compulsion to do or to not do something is very similar. And that's where like they all share personality traits, in my opinion. But how the things manifest and where they came from, I think there's a pretty decent difference. That's why I didn't know any eating disorders had totally separate groups.
Oh, I'm from LA.
Addicts.
So
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. Hollywood. Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that. I fasted during Thanksgiving. Good God.
That was soup. You know what sucks? Is that's my
All of it?
favorite food. Yeah. For some reason, Thanksgiving is my favorite. I don't even like tamales. I know that's like heresy for me, but that's my, yeah, it was so sad. I will say for some reason when you're fasting, they say it tricks your olfactory senses when you're cooking, and your brain is actually thinking that you're kind of eating when you're cooking what you're smelling what you're cooking.
Oh,
and it kind of curbs it. It's actually true. I didn't think it was true.
I feel like I'd die. It's like smelling food that you really want. Oh no.
Yeah, do you see why I kind of get upset when people are like, "Oh, I fasted because I had, chicken with no seasoning," and I'm like, I'm like, it's not the same. Oh, not the same.
No, I mean I get it. I don't disagree with you. All right, it's 10 after. I gotta roll. This was lovely. I'm glad we're doing this again. So how this works for anybody who's not been around for these is either tonight or tomorrow, I will post another poll in the announcements. I'll tag anybody who has alert turned on. If you don't have alert turned on, I highly recommend you do it because you'll only get things that are important. Just go to channels or roles, hit yes to alerts. But I'll put a poll in announcements. I'll alert everybody. Everybody will vote on the poll, whatever the topic you guys choose is the topic that we'll do. And that'll be every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time for now. Thursday and Sunday are normal. Thursday and Sunday are on the @Live Bible Study YouTube channel. And then this week, Thursday, we're not doing it, obviously, because of Halloween. We had people vote to do it Friday. So I think Friday, what we'll do is I'll give like a brief history of Halloween. Halloween from a Christian perspective, like thoughts on it, and then you guys can jump in on that too, like what you think about it. I know a lot of Christians are vehemently against Halloween, and then with whatever time's left or however long y'all want to hang out, we can do like ghost stories and stuff like that, because I've heard, interestingly enough, their ghost stories have come up a lot, not recently, but they used to come up all the time in this group on live streams. So that's the plan. That'll be Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time. So I'll change the event here for us as soon as we get off. So everything will be clean and clear. And then I'll post the poll either tonight or tomorrow. But I have to roll, and I'm very hungry, and I'm not fasting. So I'm going to go eat. Right meow. Love you guys. Have a wonderful night. Very fun.
Bye, y'all. Sorry if I offended anyone. Love you guys. Bye.
No, we love you. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night. Good night. See you guys.